So let's use it for an example. Everyone's familiar with the games. They call them treasure hunts. Treasure hunts. I remember in summer camp, you have them on you have the big game, different type of, what's a treasure hunt? A treasure hunt is essentially you're put on, let's say, an island, or you're put in a particular location, or even if it's on a screen, and you're told that there are treasures, gems hidden in different places, scattered all over, and it's your mission is to find those gems. And either you have some clues, or you have to find your own clues, but that's the mission. Now, how many of us imagine if you can you imagine if your life was that way? That the journey called life, life is a journey. It's a journey that begins from the moment when we're conceived or the moment we're born and continues through our lifetime. It's a journey. How do we travel and navigate this journey? Definitely not like a treasure hunt. How do we navigate the journey? To be honest, as adults, it's mostly a fragmented life, defined not by purpose or a compass or inner compass or some inner mission. It's defined by survival. It's defined by survival. What does survival mean? What you need, your needs. You need to eat, you need shelter, you need clothing, you need different necessities or even luxuries. And that defines, so basically your day-to-day struggle in life defines what you're going to be doing. So it's not your purpose defines your actions or your survival defines your purpose instead of your purpose defining your survival. Now when I say survival, I don't just mean the minimum survival. We can be thriving and be very successful. But what is really driving? When you wake up tomorrow morning or tonight and you make decisions, what are they based on? So they're based on a number of factors, but one of the biggest factors is what you feel is necessary for you to be able to live in this world, pay your bills. And as I said, the basics are usually food, clothing, shelter, but that of course also includes social interaction, love, relationships. And I'm not dismissing them as not important, but these are the factors that come your way, and that's what defines your life. When a person's on a treasure hunt, it's a very different approach. They know my mission is to find these treasures, and everything they do is directed toward that. Basically, it's a purpose-driven life, or a meaningful life, if I may use that expression, and that is toward fulfilling, to discovering the treasures or the gems that come your way. And that is essentially, in simple language, the essence of what is called a Kabbalistic concept, a mystical concept that's elaborated upon by the Hasidic masters, called the elevating, the discovery and the elevation of the divine sparks in this world. Now again, that sounds esoteric, but I'll explain it in very simple terms. It means the following, that each of us, when we're born and we're sent to this world on a mission, are allocated with a certain amount of sparks. Sparks are basically opportunities, spiritual opportunities. However, they're embedded in all the activities and all the interactions of our lives, in the physical things we do, in the people we know, in the personality we have, in the places we will travel to, in the different opportunities that will come our way. So like, why is one person born in Israel, another person born in New York, or in California, or in Holland, or in Sydney, Australia? Why do some of us travel from one place to the next? So we may have all kinds of ostensible reasons. Our families travel for business, for pleasure. No. But there's a hidden choreography in each one of our lives. This by no means negates our free will, because our free will is how we will navigate through this choreography. But the bottom line is that your life is just it's rich with opportunities. You look at a good business person, a person who's running a successful business, and one thing you'll see, every success story has one key thing. Wherever they go, whoever they meet, 24/7, they're always on call. So they're always looking for an opportunity to either promote their business, for a client, connections, networking, etc., etc. Why? Because they are on a mission. Their mission is to get their business to succeed, and anyone they meet is for them a potential opportunity. Some opportunities work out better than others, but nothing is left of taken for granted. The same as when you send an astronaut into outer space, there's no question that an astronaut knows 24/7 they're on a mission. They can't just do whatever they want. Why? Because they have to fulfill a mission. They have to dress a certain way because of the elements, eat a certain fashion, and they're on a call. We human beings are the only ones in existence that have the ability to simply say, you know what, I'm going to do nothing. I have no mission, I have no purpose, I'm hanging out today. Look at animals, look at nature, the sun and the moon, the stars, water, the oceans. There's nothing in existence that has not have a calling. They all have a role to play. Bees never say, you know, we're on vacation, we're not going to cross-pollinate, and so on. The seasons come and go, everything in its time, everything has its role. It is the human being that is the only one that has created the opportunity, a situation where you say, what are you doing today? Nothing. The concept of creating the couch potato. I'm going to sit around. You know, the joke, I can't resist telling the joke, it's one of my favorites, recently at least. The guy's coming out, the guy's an old Jew sitting on a bench, and he's all depressed, and his friend comes over and says, why are you so depressed today? He says, my wife is really angry at me. What's she angry about? She said, nothing new, she's always angry at you. No, today was really special. What happened? This morning when she went to work, she asked me, what am I going to do? And I told her nothing. So she said to me, didn't you say that? You said that yesterday. And I told her I wasn't finished. I wasn't finished doing nothing. So in other words, nothing is also an objective. Only the human being is capable of trying to master that art. Now, in truth is, I have to tell you that this is really a modern phenomenon. 100 years ago, it didn't exist, this idea of doing nothing, because we were struggling for survival. And I mean the whole human race. When you spent 8, 9, 10 hours toiling in a field just to make just to get a sack of potatoes so you can have dinner, you don't have really time to sit around and watch football, or to agonize and become neurotic over something that is non-existent, because you're busy surviving. I mentioned this a number of times. There was the admiral. Oh boy, will come to me his name. Came over from Rickover. Yeah, Adam Rickover was a Jew. Came over from Eastern Europe in the early 20th century. I don't know if he came after the Holocaust, after the war, but before. And he rose in the ranks. He became in the Navy, U.S. Navy, the highest rank is a 4-star admiral, not 5-star. And he's called the father of the nuclear navy. He gave a talk in 1955, approximately, and it was a very interesting statistic that he shared. He said he did some research and said, what is the difference? A key number statistic different between 1855 and 100 years later, 1955. This was the statistic. In 1855, which is essentially the onset of the Industrial Revolution, 90-some percent, maybe 92% of energy generated in the world was generated through human labor. Okay? 100 years later, in 1955, over 90% of energy is generated through machines. Now, this isn't a small factor, which means that suddenly it's gone to machines. A machine, you could be sleeping and the machine is doing its work. The press of a button can produce so much more than a human being toiling in a field. Whether you talk about the different technologies that were being advanced. So the question is, how did this impact the world? And the answer, especially the Western world, where the Industrial Revolution was full force. And the answer is two things that happened. Number one, an explosion of accumulation of wealth, unprecedented. Because suddenly, as wealthy as a person may have been, now if you control those machines, you suddenly multiplies exponentially that much more. And number two, it created the birth of a new phenomenon in human life. It's called leisure. A lot of free time. Because you don't have to spend time generating energy. You have others doing that. You have machines doing that. And so what do you do with all this free time? Have we become more noble, more spiritual, more knowledgeable, more altruistic? No. We started filling it with the pleasures of luxuries that are mostly nonsense and empty, but we need to fill time. So it's not really, I'm digressing a bit, but the point I want to make, this is the example of a life not driven like an astronaut or a treasure hunt, but it's a life driven by whatever comes your way. Now this doesn't mean we can't accomplish great things, but it's a very different, by contrast, to what the concept that I'm describing, the divine sparks, which means that wherever you go, whatever you do, even sitting right now here, you have spiritual opportunities to release, and only you can do so. Here's one story that I always share this story from the Baal Shem Tov. To me, it's a really a game-changing story, that if you really align your life to this approach, it really can change dramatically many things in your life. And I've used it in my own personal life, and I've shared it with many people. The story goes, the Baal Shem Tov was the founder of the Hasidic movement. And he lived approximately 300 years ago. Yeah. And he had different disciples and students. One of them was Rabbi Chaim Rappaport. Chaim Rappaport. He was himself a great man in his own right, and the Baal Shem Tov asked him to go on a mission, fulfill some mission. We don't know what the mission was, but he sent him to some city on a mission. He came back, mission accomplished, and the Baal Shem Tov insisted on knowing how he traveled to this place where his mission was, which seemed to be trivial details. Who really cares how he got there, whether he went this way or that way? Be like you go down Broadway or down Fifth Avenue. But since the Baal Shem Tov asked, so he recollected and said, well, it was a 2-day journey. First day, I had a little inn. I stayed at night. The second night, there's no inn, so I slept at the edge of a road. And in the morning, I woke up, I washed my hands, and I said my prayers, and then I sat down to have something to eat, something I packed up. And there was a little brook or spring of water nearby. I went over, took a cup of water, made a blessing. The blessing, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Shahakal Niyeh B'Dvarei, and I drank the water. The Baal Shem Tov, with excitement, jumped up and said these words. He said, that brook of water has been waiting since the beginning of time for you to come and make a blessing on it. That's the story. To me, it's a tremendous story of how to look at life. And I've traveled personally many places, speaking, book tours. I've been around. And I've been in places that I think some of them probably no Jew ever stepped before. At least not my knowledge. It's like sometimes you go into the woods. So Robert Frost said most people take the road most traveled on. And I took the road less traveled. There's a certain pleasure when you walk down a path that nobody has ever walked before. There's no path. You're the one that's the trailblazer. You're creating the path. And then there's the path that everybody walks on, which is safer, no doubt, less risk because others have walked on it. But there's something about treading a new path. And this story to me captures what I spoke about renewal before. When you come to a place, you may come there for a business meeting, you may come there for my case, a speaking engagement, or whatever brought you there, through vacation, a friend you traveled with. You may even be there in your mind by accident, but there's no such thing. You're there because there is a divine spark waiting in either the water that you will drink, or the food that you will eat, or the person that you will meet, or the encounter, or the nature that you will witness, that you will see. Sparks that are waiting, allocated to you from the beginning of time for you to come and set them free. If you can adapt that mindset in your daily activities, you tell me how that would change a person's life. Completely. It means, even when you're walking down the street, you may be walking, going shopping, or you're walking, just take a walk, or you're going to work, or whatever it may be, or meet a friend, or coffee. Yes, all those good reasons, but there's also a deeper reason. There's a choreography to our lives. God, as King David writes in the book of Psalm, Hashem etzadik over Kenanu, God leads the footsteps of a human being. So there is no accident, period. Not where you were born, and not where you've traveled to, and not who you've met, and not your opportunities, and not the people, and not even your personality. Everything about you has embedded the concept of divine sparks. So in Kabbalistic, esoteric, mystical terms, it's divine sparks. But think of it as simply as gems or spiritual opportunities waiting for you to free them and release them. And that defines your navigation of your life. Not circumstances, and not the things that happen to you, or not even react. You don't react to others. You are always proactive in that sense, like the businessman that's always looking for opportunities. This doesn't mean we don't react. Someone is in need or someone requests. Obviously, we react. But your whole personality is not defined by you reacting to other people's behavior or what others are expecting of you. It's defined by looking for this, essentially your treasure hunt. That you were given allocated a certain amount of gems and treasures. However, they're not open and obvious. They're embedded in your life, and it's your mission is to discover them. And when you do that, you free those sparks. You yourself become a freer and greater person because you're also freeing and redeeming your own self and your skills. You know, if a person, for example, has the skill, a writing skill, or a communication skill, or an artistic skill, or a business organization skill, or a people person. I mean, everybody has their so-called strengths. They could also not. They could be in a situation where they never access or never use those strengths. There are people, unfortunately, that's what happens. Whatever life circumstances, or lack of confidence, or sometimes the opportunity didn't come that easily. So you can live your whole life with tremendous skill, and it remains locked and trapped inside of you. That's a divine spark, or divine sparks, I should say, plural. It's like a talent that you've never used. Recently, I've been quoting Oliver Wendell Holmes' The Voiceless, his poem, where he has this devastating line, which I don't like to repeat it because it's very sad, but nevertheless it's important to repeat. Where he writes, "Alas, alas to those that die with their song still inside them." You know? We all have a song inside of us. Long before Oliver Wendell Holmes, the Zohar said this, the Kabbalah said it, that we have songs, we have melodies inside of us that you and only you can play and sing those songs. Now, it doesn't always mean a physical song, actual song. It means a voice. It means an expression, something unique. And one of the saddest things is a person, God forbid, lived through their lives and never sang their song. Either because they were silenced and their life is driven by fear, or did not have the love and the nurturing that gave them the confidence to be able to express it, or 1,000 other reasons. The reasons don't even matter, really. End of the day, it's your songs. These are part of the sparks that you're given. So the concept of discovering, understanding divine sparks is not some type of nice esoteric mystical idea. It's actually your life. That's a way of defining your life. And it's interesting, even from birth, you could say a little newborn baby, they're not even conscious, they're not in control of themselves, but they still have sparks, the joy they bring to their family, their own unique little personality. And definitely as life goes on, we all have this allocation of hundreds, thousands, who knows how many, sparks waiting to be released, but that comes through an action of ours. And that means that literally every person you meet has that opportunity. I'll share another story which this idea. So, well, before I get there, let me go back to what I was saying. So sometimes I've been to cities. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, it was actually here in New York, in Crown Heights, where I live, Brooklyn. So there's the Jewish Children's Museum on the corner of Kingston Eastern Parkway. It's a cultural location and funded by the government partially. But one of the conditions is cultural exchange, which means even though it's a Jewish museum, but they have to host and should host different communities from different religions and faiths and races. One day I get a call from the director of the museum that there's a group of Sri Lankan monks coming to visit. Around 25, 30 monks from Sri Lanka. Now, I've never been to Sri Lanka. Anybody here been to Sri Lanka? And I definitely didn't meet any Sri Lankan monks. And he asked me to share a few words. Since they're coming, he asked me to do that. So fine. I arrived. I was sitting in a little auditorium, a screening room. What are they called? A little theater. So I decided I met them. They were all dressed in these bright orange robes. Very fine, nice, very disciplined. They sat in the front row. And I said, you know what, I might as well talk about something that I thought would be common spiritual ideas, between Jewish spiritual mystical ideas and what I knew would be Buddhist ideas. And I spoke about the renewal of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the new energy that, as I mentioned earlier, but in a little more detail, a lot about the energy. And they are trained to be completely quiet and no facial expression, reactions to when a master speaks. So I'm sitting there, any joke I made, any emotional story, there was no reaction on their face. They sat like stones. Very unlike American audiences, and definitely very unlike Jewish audiences, where everybody is commenting, I heard that story, stupid joke, that type of thing. I agree with you, I disagree. Even when they agree, they're vocal. Here they're sitting, there's 25, 30 monks sitting, and for a speaker, it's a little disconcerting because you don't know if they're reacting or not. Do they understand what you're saying or not? And no reaction. Whatever I said a little something dramatic. You say a joke because you want to see whether you're engaging the audience. No reaction. And it wasn't an ego thing for me. I just felt, I don't know if I was getting through or not. Maybe they don't even know what I'm talking about. So then I decided to do something, which I remember the director and the other people, the rabbis in the room and others, were like shocked. So I said, with your permission, I said to the monks, with your permission, I'd like to sing you a Hasidic melody. And I began to sing a song. It's a Yom Kippur song. And as I sang the song, a very moving, touching song, very solemn song, as I began singing, their faces literally changed. You could see they melted. And afterwards, I asked them, I said, so when I spoke, did you understand anything I said? They said, excellent. What you said was brilliant. It was beautiful. So why was there no reaction? We're trained not to react. What about the song? They said the song, we couldn't control ourselves. Because the song has a different power. But the reason I'm telling the story is because I felt a certain, I don't know what the word is, pride. I felt I'd tread a new path. I don't think these Sri Lankan monks ever heard this Yalla Niggin song from Yom Kippur, of Yom Kippur. So it was very similar to the story of Rabbi Chaim Rappaport, that maybe from the beginning of time, these Sri Lankan monks have been waiting for a guy like me to get up and sing them a song like that. This is an example where you look for opportunities. You don't wait to react. And I'm not saying this to toot my horn, obviously. I'm just saying it as an example. That means you're always in the proactive mode. You're always initiating because you're looking for those treasures, and you never know where they're going to be. The Baal Shem Tov has another tremendous line. He says that a soul comes down to earth at times and lives 70, 80 years. It wears and tears 70, 80 years just to do a favor for another person. The thing is, we don't know which person that is and which favor it is. So it's just a way of looking at life, that you're looking at life not just about me, and how can I survive and how can I grow, but you really see yourself, you're a messenger, you're an ambassador of hope, of life-affirming messages, of divine sparks, and it's treasures. These are not just obligated, they're treasures. They're your treasures, but they're like a treasure hunt. They're hidden, they're embedded, they're concealed. And who's going to find them? You. And every moment is that opportunity. Right now, as we sit here, tomorrow morning, tonight, whatever you're doing. Another example, these are stories that I've told them in the past, so some of you may have heard them. It doesn't matter, it just captures the idea. I was going on a Shabbaton to the Hamptons a number of years ago. It was Friday afternoon. I stopped at a local gas station in one of the towns there, on the way on the Long Island Expressway. I finished filling up my car, and right next door to the gas station was a club. And I saw that there was be a party tonight, and there was a parking attendant, comes over to me and says to me, are you staying for the party? He's going to park my car. So I said, no, I'm going to another party. So he said, what kind of party? I said, I'm going to what's called a Sabbath, Shabbat party. And he became very intrigued, and he said to me, what is that? I told him what Shabbat is. He was maybe a 19-year-old, 20-year-old guy. And we talk, he says, what do you do? So I said, I'm a writer, I'm a speaker, I teach. What do you teach? Spirituality, psychology, Jewish ideas in a universal context. And he asked me to put him on our mailing list, on our email list. He wants to get the material. Fine. So I took his email, and we parted ways. I went off to East Hampton, and he That was that. I went back to New York after Shabbos the next day, Sunday morning, and I gave it to my office, the address, and that was that. I never thought I'd hear again about this. Almost 7 years later, 7 years, I receive an email from him. He says to me, "You probably don't remember me. I was like this you probably look like some type of hick kid hanging around in some club. I was parking cars, and you gave me, and ever since you've been sending these emails. I want you to know that I am Jewish, and I unfortunately both my parents were killed in a car accident when I was young, and they split up our family, and they sent me off first to relatives, and this foster home, that foster home, messy life. I've never really got any education, but in the last 7 years since I've been receiving your emails, I need you to know that you have become my source for everything that I do Jewish." And he started describing, he says, "Your email, I pray with the Rosh Hashanah email and the Yom Kippur one and your Sukkot one." He knew Hanukkah, he knew dates that most people don't even know. And he says, "I don't go to synagogue, but this became my source. And I can every week I would get the emails from you, and I continue to get, and I just wanted you to know that." And I thought to myself, I remember I was obviously moved by the story, and I said to myself, why is technology here on Earth? Why were we given technology? Most people will answer, scientists figured out technologies, and now we have to exploit it and for our own entertainment and satisfaction and socializing and maybe making money or whatever it is. But that's not how the divine spark attitude, the lens of a mystic looks at, that technology is a force in nature that God placed for us to redeem its sparks. And I really felt that the whole purpose of email was maybe just for this guy getting these emails. Now obviously there are many more people on earth that can benefit. But my point was, I really felt, because if we didn't have technology, we didn't have email, we didn't have internet, what's the likelihood that he would come from this town to a class here in Manhattan? Well, almost no chance. But here's that technology, and it's nothing. All you do is press a button. You don't even have to add any effort. There's no postage, there's no money, there's no extra effort. So I became, after that, I must say, I became quite obsessed with harvesting emails. I started gathering emails because I said to myself, it's the easiest way to reach people with a message and no extra effort. And I've told people say, okay, give me an example. What can I do that's proactive, that helps redeem sparks? I'll tell you, what you can do? Build yourself a little email list. That's not just for your own business, but you see a good, inspiring line, a warm thought, share it with people. No cost, almost no time. You don't even have to write it yourself. You can find something today. It's so easy, you just forward it. And you can change a person's life. Because you never know who needs a voice of hope, or a voice of trust, or just a loving, kind word. It's only a technology that is changing the world, but no one really thinks of it. What's the heart and soul of technology? So technology. As a matter of fact, many people lament the fact that technology, with all its advancements, and communications with all its connections, we've never been more disconnected. Has technology actually helped, let's put it this way, for us to love each other? I know there's J date and this date and that date. Maybe something came of that. But has technology actually made us better human beings? We really care about each other more. Now, if you love someone, we used to always say about technology, junk in, junk out. If you love someone, technology can enhance that. But if you don't, it's not going to change anything. I was sitting in a car with a friend of mine I hadn't seen for many years. We were both being driven to a wedding. I thought we have an opportunity to talk to each other, catch up. He's busy texting. That's the latest. So I'm like, I'm trying to get his attention. And he's just busy texting. He keeps making with his hand like that. So what do you think I did? I texted him. I'm sitting right near him. I texted him. And I wrote to him, "Hey, hi, I haven't seen you so long." And he looks at the text, I remember. He's sitting near me, literally like this. And he looks at me, he's like somewhat this oriented, huh? Yeah. He says, "Are you texting me?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Why are you texting me? You're sitting right near me." I said, "Because I can't get your damn attention for the last hour." So he says, "Okay, I'll get back to your text shortly." That was basically. So technology. You think, when was the last time you had a eye-to-eye, heart-to-heart, soul-to-soul conversation with someone without any distractions? Not checking your texts, not checking anything. I rue the day that someone's going to come up with a virtual mother. Instead of having a mother cradle a child, we'll have a computer do it, and it'll feel like it's a mother. It'll be exactly like a virtual mother or something. I'm not here to attack fire and brimstone technology. I'm trying to point out how divine sparks take a whole different way of looking at life. That's not just there. It's there for you to find the treasure within it in some way to make the world a better place, put it bluntly. And each of us has our own skills, our own opportunities. And when you look at things that way, your life changes. Because you're no longer just of someone that's that's riding along this merry-go-round or roller coaster called life, but you are actually seeing every twist and turn, and even setbacks, as an opportunity, as a treasure, as a gem, or in the language of the mystics, as a divine spark. And like any divine spark, it's trapped inside some object, and you have to free it. You free it by using it for the right purpose. The water has been waiting from the beginning of time for you to come make a blessing. A person has been waiting for you to sit near them, seemingly by accident, in a commute, and say a kind word. Maybe all of existence has been waiting for you to do that. And so on and so forth, all the different opportunities that come our way. So the concept of divine sparks is a tremendous revolutionary concept, really. It's like saying what you see is not what you get. You look around a room, you see things. You walk down the street, you see things. You hear things. You taste, touch, and smell. That's the surface level. But there's a hidden choreography behind your life, and waiting for you to align yourself with it, waiting for you to navigate, to travel on that path. But most of us get so consumed with the superficial and with the immediate that we don't even notice. We don't hear the music. There's that famous Joshua Bell experiment. You know about it? You've heard about it? In the Washington Grand Central Station in Washington, D.C. So Joshua Bell is a world-class virtuoso, violinist. And people pay thousands of dollars to come hear him in Carnegie Hall or other houses, theaters. He decided to do an experiment. I think one of the newspapers commissioned him to sit down, rush hour, Washington, D.C., in the largest train terminal, where thousands of people commute to work, with his $1 million Stradivarius, the violin, on a box, with obviously a little plate on the side, so everyone thinks it is. Joshua Bell, the famous Joshua Bell, is sitting and playing some of the most beautiful music ever played. And it's all videoed. And everybody passes by. Nobody even notices. Here and there, if someone throws a coin. The main scene is then a child, a little girl or a little boy, I think, not sure, is running with the mother, running to a train, but the child gets so mesmerized and starts going over it because the child senses something. But the mother doesn't have patience, so she schleps the child away. And obviously, bottom line is, nobody even appreciated something that they would have to pay a $1,000 ticket to hear him in a concert. Because we are distracted by the rush hour of our lives. So we can miss the entire story of our true lives. That's how sad that can be. We get so involved in what the immediate needs, necessities, expectations. And I'm not saying that they're bad necessarily, but they are surface level. They're not the purpose of your life. They're at best the means. The concept of divine sparks takes your eyes to look through a different lens. And that is the lens of not what the superficial looks like, not what your immediate here and now and instant gratification is about, but what is the deeper story? What is the inside story of your life? Have you ever thought about that? Kierkegaard writes that you can only understand your life backwards, but you have to live your life frontwards. When you look back in life, sometimes you can see somewhat of the choreography. Sometimes you can see things you had no idea why they happened, how they led to something better. Even setbacks. But when you look forward, you don't see that. You don't know what's coming tomorrow. But you can rest assured there is a choreography. The choreography will not control what you do. The choreography will lay out where you're going to be at. The question, what you will do is whether you'll redeem the spark or will you not. Will you see the opportunity and grab it and turn it into something greater or not? I could have told the guy who's the parking lots, I have no time for you, goodbye, I'm moving on. I wasn't trained to think like that. Many of us miss the boat. I remember a beautiful couple coming to this class many years, and they were a boyfriend, girlfriend, and I remember used to talk, and I say, so why don't you guys get married? I say, no, we have no time for that, so they keep it still uncommitted. And then they decided that they're not necessary for each other, whatever the reasons were. I mean, I wasn't pushing it, I was just talking to them. A few years later, I meet them, they're married, with children, and happy. Same couple. They broke apart maybe 20 times. I'm sure you're familiar with these stories. New York, the Mecca of the epidemic of single life. Some call it the Mecca, you can call it an epidemic, both. Anyway, I asked them, so how did that came about? So they said, listen, they were so busy. He was building a new company, she got a new job. They were so distracted by the material successes and career building and climbing the corporate ladder, they didn't even have time for each other. They would go on a date, their minds were somewhere else. So they didn't even think they were made for each other. Then what happened was his thing didn't work out, her thing didn't work out. Then suddenly you start thinking clear because you don't have distractions. So even though they thought of it both as a loss because he didn't get his company never got off the ground, she didn't get what she was looking for, it ended up becoming the biggest blessing because they didn't have this distraction. How many other blessings are like that are in our lives that we're busy with whatever we think is so important when really there's another story emerging that you just don't even notice. I can tell you, and I can tell you this from hard-earned experience, meeting and speaking to many, many people in my life, very, very often, I can't say always, very often the problem is not the issue. The problem is the person is not ready to hear what they need to hear. And they could be, people tell me, I'm absolutely ready to hear anything you have to say. And unfortunately, it's not always the case. So we may be blocked, like I said earlier, we may not even be open for whatever reason. It could be our anger, it could be fear, it could be other emotions, it could be pride and arrogance. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that we're not able of hearing what we really need to hear. And then what we really need to hear is what's really the story of our lives. So I'm not suggesting that person should just rely on someone else going to tell you your story, but I am suggesting we need objective mentoring. We need someone that can coach, someone that cares about you, but also you invite them to kick you in the pants if necessary, so to speak. You invite them also to give you objective perspective. You may not like to hear what they say, but that's the only way to really discover and go beyond the surface level, which is why so many of us really discover deeper truths, unfortunately, when there's pain or loss. Why? Because when things are going well, as Leonard Cohen says, when there's no cracks, everything is smooth. When there's the cracks, that's how the light gets through. When we're comfortable and the status quo, so our comfort zone creates a certain apathy and complacency. When there's a crack, you can't afford that, so you suddenly realize there's something deeper to look at. Now, I'm not suggesting we should wait for cracks. I'm suggesting we should be intelligent enough to preempt and not need to wait because we look beneath the surface. This is essentially really the two choices a person has in their lives. Will your trajectory, or like I said before about the swimmer, will the journey of your life be defined by whatever comes your way, or the survival or needs that are immediate and the material needs of your life, or will it be driven by a spiritual mission to redeem the sparks, free them, and transform them into some greater force for good? That really comes down to the choices. This doesn't mean that a person should live a selfless life and you have no benefits and then you don't have to deal with your survival. It means, however, what is the priority? What is the priority? And when you see yourself as mission-driven, as purpose-driven, as meaningful-driven, then you look at life as all the things that happen to me are opportunities for me to use them to turn them into something greater. And this by no means contradicts, as I said, the basic. I remember an individual I won't use the name because I don't want to breach any confidence. He's a pretty prominent executive. People know him, CEO of a big company. Years ago, I met him, and he told me that, he was known, he told me that he got a copy of my book, Toward a Meaningful Life. And he was so intrigued by the book, it so affected him, that he began to give them to friends. To the point that in one of the chapters in the book, it says there that in a way to, let's say you're running a business. So that a successful business, you're making money, and everyone's happy. And it's an ethical business. Let's assume all that. But is it purpose-driven? Is it about finding those divine sparks? So one of the suggestions I write in that chapter on business and money, I believe it is, business and wealth, is that to put a charity box on your office desk, not just in your home, your office desk. Why? Because it's a reminder that even in this so-called dog eats dog and hostile market negotiating world of Wall Street, it's a reminder that charity, it's like somewhat of a taming of the beast of pure raw greed and capitalism. And to have a charity box on the table, on the desk. So he decided to do that. He had some of these high-powered meetings, and he would always, at the end of the meeting, put a few coins in the charity box and ask everyone else to do this. Then he'd give them a copy of my book. She said he had a few cases of books. He says it changed his whole life and his whole business. Why? Because until then he was like two personalities, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. At work, at home he was like Dr. Jekyll, fine, refined, father, husband. When he came to work, he was known as a shark, he was known as a real tough negotiator. He says suddenly in meetings, we're putting money in a charity box. At the end of a meeting, the meeting still went on. That business didn't change. Giving them a book. And people started seeing that I'm a human being, not just a tough businessman. And began to create conversation. He said, I had a whole deal with a negotiation with some Japanese companies, and they have their own traditions, and they were very intrigued by this, the idea of a charity box, of all places in the office. He says it created a different dialogue. We created a trust. We started realizing we're also souls, not just business people here. So what's another example of what divine sparks are? This doesn't mean, in other words, it's adding a dimension to life that is not compromising the outer dimension, it's just adding an inner dimension, an inner choreography. And it could very well be that the business meeting is not so much for the business deal, but for this purpose of two souls communing and bonding and connecting. Now, if these ideas are foreign to some of you, I would definitely encourage you to explore them further and study and realize. If they're not so foreign, because you may have heard it, it's implementing that is necessary, because it could change everything about your life. Now, I'm not suggesting cold turkey suddenly, go from one mode to another, but if you can start introducing into your life that mindset, that attitude, that whatever comes your way is a spiritual opportunity for your soul, was sent to this earth, and existence is waiting from the beginning of time for you to do something, to do that mitzvah, that kind gesture, that charity, that whatever it may be, then it takes it adds a dimension, literally a transformative dimension to your entire life. And life becomes exactly that, a treasure hunt. It's pretty good, treasure hunt. I remember we were all excited about treasure hunts. And it's a treasure hunt, finding these treasures that you have concealed or locked away or somewhere in your life that have been put there by God, waiting for you to do something to free them. So I think it's a great message, especially as we enter this new year, because it's one thing in the holidays in a way carry us on their wings, especially if you have good experience in the holidays. You go back to the routines of life, so it gets back into that, back to the monotony of our patterns. However, if you can take the energy of Tishrei, of this month of Tishrei, as I said, the holidays, and infuse your attitude and your life and your day-to-day routines with this new approach, that everything is a divine spark waiting for me to do something with it, it can add a whole new passion and excitement to even things that seem completely monotonous. Because in essence, nothing really is monotonous. It's only in our eyes. As I mentioned before, it's only the human being that creates the couch potato, the immobile, static situation. Nothing in life is static. Nothing. As I said, the seasons change. Everything in life is mobile. But we can become trapped in a type of like frozen paralysis. When in truth, we're also, your heart is beating every moment. You're breathing in and out every moment. And it's all really a journey. So what we're doing when we become more sedentary and immobile, we're essentially fighting the flow of life. I mentioned the cardiologist that comes to the class once in a while. Very difficult life, very difficult. He always tells me, I remember he telling me, I wish I had one day of complete animal bliss, peace. Being that he was a cardiologist, I decided to, in a humorous way, I said to him, so what do you mean, like complete bliss, like a flat line? So he says, no, not that. If you ever look at a cardiogram, a healthy heart better not be a flat line. A healthy heart, the cardiogram looks like this. It's a wave, peaks and valleys. A flatlining means that the heart has stopped, God forbid. Now, you don't want to have extreme peaks and extreme valleys. You want to have a balance, but it's a wave, like a wave. You ever stand at an ocean? I was a kid, I stood in an ocean, I was waiting for the ocean to go to sleep. It never went to sleep. 24/7, it's relentless. And you learn the cycles of life, the rhythm of life, the pulsating rhythm. Today we know in modern physics, there's no such thing as anything that's dead, really. We all leave this room here, and there's no human beings. Is this room dead? No. Besides, I'm not talking about the objects in the room. It's pulsating on a subatomic level. Energy is there everywhere. Einstein equals, everything is energy, even if you don't see it. Subatomic particles are constantly moving. Even when you're asleep, even when something, so to speak, looks dead, it's brimming with life. It's just our superficial eyes only see the so-called, the surface level. But everything is like, imagine looking at the ocean and you never knew, no one ever went diving beneath the surface of the ocean. No one ever saw cameras down below. What do you think we think? The ocean, once in a while you see a fish, there's a few fish in the sea. Today we know the sea has more complex organisms and more animal life than we have on Earth. The Talmud said that a long time ago. It says everything that's kol ma sheyesh bi, but everything on land exists in the sea. It doesn't say everything in the sea exists on land, because the truth is the sea has more species than land does. Many that haven't even been discovered yet. The sea is filled with energy. Just because there's a sea cover that doesn't allow us to see it, doesn't mean that it's not there. Which is why nature, in Hebrew, the word for nature, teva, also means submerged. It means when you throw something into the water, it gets submerged, you feel like nothing's there. It's as if it disappeared. But it's not disappeared, it's just covered up. So covered up, the cover of this world, this material universe, is like a layer that hides and conceals the subatomic divine spiritual sparks that exists everywhere. And they are always alive. Now, if you don't access them, they remain trapped. If you do, then you come alive as they come alive, because you bring it all alive in that level that I've been discussing here. I think this is a pretty good, appealing approach to life, if I may say so myself. And now the question is what you're going to do with this information. So as we enter this new year, I hope that I tried to do some justice to this idea and concept. There's a lot more to be said, obviously. But remember, these sparks are waiting for you to do something about them, and only you can do it. I can't redeem your spark, you can't redeem mine. Sometimes we need two people together to redeem them together. That's all joint ventures, joint projects, collaboration, cross-pollination, as I mentioned. But primarily, there are things that only you can accomplish, because that's the sparks allocated to you. This is what makes you unique, your talents, your skills, your capacities, abilities, opportunities. So, as I began, I want to conclude with the blessing again that we should all learn to be great navigators and swimmers, as we, treasure hunters, I should say. Looking for the treasures that are there right in our path, sometimes a little more hidden than others, but they're there waiting for you to come from the beginning of time to release them. And everyone should have a blessed year, as I said, with health and abundance and success. I want to give you my personal blessing as well, due to your challenges, that you should only grow from them, and should only be revealed blessings going forward. And we're here every Wednesday night, and please see the Meaningful Life Center as a partner with you. We intersect in this mission of finding these sparks. I can say that you're sitting right here in this class began in 1982 and never stopped since. 1982 till today is what? 92? 2002? 36 years almost, 35 years. And probably 30, 40,000 people have come to this class, if not more. And I find that to be a tremendous thing, because it's all 35, 40,000 sparks. And who knows what one spark sparks another and ignites another. So I want to share with you that I think all of us can do things similar to that. Things that are good, make sure you perpetuate it. Don't stop good things. That was my commitment always, that I would never stop the class. Even though in the beginning I didn't know where it's going to go. It wasn't even planned. One guy came to me looking for inspiration. He brought a friend. We hit it off. Another friend brought a friend, and a friend brought another friend. And we went on like that. It was then Wednesday night, Thursday nights, then it moved to Wednesday. To the point I remember one Wednesday night, I was sitting at home, and it was Shavuos night, holiday. And suddenly the bell rings. And I realized that, we didn't have emails then. They had a bunch of people suddenly here. Like 4 or 5 people came to the class. It was Wednesday night, but it was Shavuos night. And I'm all dressed up. I just came back from shul, from the synagogue. The table is all set. We invited them in, obviously, and they're all like, say, why is it so beautiful? I said, because you're here, special guests. They say, yeah, but we were here last week too. I said, special reasons. And they had a festive Shavuos meal, not knowing at all what it was till I told them later. But that's to the extent that I always maintained it, no matter what. And I look back and I think to myself, it's a lesson for all of us, because when you see life with divine sparks everywhere, how could you stop something like that? And that's what my blessing to you, that you should see that, have that focus in life to know what's primary and what's secondary. The primary thing is the freeing of the sparks, of redeeming them, of the redemption of these sparks. You do that, you can't imagine how much it gives you in return, enriching your life and your experiences and your whole future trajectory. So God bless you all in that sense, and we will be here continuing every Wednesday night. If you haven't left your email address, please do so, those online as well, because then we can notify you in case, firstly, if there's a change, like if the class, for some reason I'm traveling, so then the class would be only online, or in general to stay in touch and take advantage of all the resources of the Meaningful Life Center. And with that, everyone have a very pleasant and beautiful, blessed week and blessed year. Thank you very much.